Yo, Zaunitas! Sejam bem-vindos ao Laboratório de Zaun, muito bem-vindos a mais um vídeo aqui no canal. Hoje, meus amigos, eu trago para vocês um vídeo muito especial, porque eu estou aqui com o Ed, o Riot Magic. E aí, Ed, tudo bem?
Hey, how's it going?
O Ed, ele, caso você não conheça ele é o cara que tá por trás das mudanças no sistema ranqueado do League of Legends. Então, hoje a gente vai estar fazendo mais uma entrevista com ele. Eu agradeço muito a Riot Games que me proporcionou essa oportunidade e eu espero que vocês gostem aí das perguntas, tá bom? Já vai deixando aquele gostei maroto para ajudar esse humilde canalzinho a continuar crescendo. E vamos lá fazer a nossa primeira pergunta pro Ed. Quando a gente fala de ranqueado, a gente também pensa bastante no tempo. E eu queria saber se agora com os ranks posicionais vai ficar mais fácil e mais rápido subir de liga, principalmente para aqueles jogadores que são monochampion, que só joga com um campeão. Você acha que isso vai mudar alguma coisa?
Yeah, that's interesting. I think the way that we've designed the system, or the goal that we had in mind when we were designing position ranks, was we wanted the experience for a player who played kind of like a typical player does today to be very similar. And so we kind of designed the system around a player who plays kind of two positions usually, maybe a third one when they get auto-filled. And I think for that player, the climb is going to be very, very similar to today. That player probably plays enough games that they're going to see a relatively rapid, similar to today, climb in their main position. They might be slightly lower or climb slightly slower in their second position, and then their autofill position, whatever, that probably support in most regions. It's unlikely to make very much movement throughout the season unless that player kind of makes an effort and invests time in it. I think so. That's the baseline, right? So now let's talk about around that. A player who plays only one position and can only get one position, I think that's probably like support players. They tend to be able to get their position almost all the time, if not all the time. That kind of a player probably actually climbs in their main position a little bit faster than they do now because they have fewer other games to kind of bog them down, if you will. Let's say today you play 90% of your games in bot lane and you play 10% in top. And let's just say you lose more often in top right now. Well, in the future with position ranks, you won't have as many of those 10% of those top lane games kind of pulling down your progress in bot lane. So you'll probably reach your sort of rank equilibrium point faster. But that's not for sure. I think we'll see how that plays out. And then for players who play more positions, so they play like, instead of playing two, maybe a fill player, right? Someone who plays all the positions at the same time. I think that player will make slightly slower progress than they do today. Not by much, hopefully, and I think we'll be looking at tuning that. But the idea is that player, if they're genuinely playing all positions and they're making progress in all positions, their progress in any one position might be a little slower than they would expect with today's system, but hopefully not by much. And I think that it will be more fulfilling in a way because even though that progress is slightly slower, you're actually making visual progress that other people can see across multiple positions. So you can now have kind of different angles to show off, right? You can be the player who literally is platinum in all 5 positions. And that will be different from a player who is platinum top lane, right? And only in top lane. I think that's kind of the important distinction there. So that's roughly how it will work. I don't think there's a huge difference between someone who one tricks a champion and one tricks a position. I think those tend to kind of go hand in hand for the most part. There are some champions who a player might take in 2 or 3 positions, but even then, it's pretty common for a player who's, say, a Z1 trick or whatever to mostly focus in mid and only play games in top or whatever when they are forced to. And so I think those are pretty similar.
Então, com todas essas mudanças que vocês vão fazer, você acha que o pareamento vai ficar mais justo?
Well, if I just take a step back and I think about, well, why do we do position ranks, right? One of the reasons why we did them is because we looked across all of our games right now, and we see that when a player ends up in a game as their secondary, tertiary, whatever position, they mathematically just more of the time they lose those games. And so we think about why might that be, and the reason is pretty obvious, right? It's that you're not as good at those positions. So when we matchmake you as if you're playing your best position into a game where you're not playing your best position, you're more likely to lose. And I think so. Given that being the reason that we wanted to do position ranks, the whole purpose of the feature is to make matchmaking more fair, right? It's to make sure that when we put you in a game with other people, that you are as good as all the other people on the team, and that they are all as good as you at whatever position they're playing. They could be better at a different position, that's fine, but they're not playing that position in this game. And so it's really important that we take into consideration, well, what are you doing this game? And what are the other people on your team doing this game? And so I think given that position ranks is supposed to do that, the next question is, okay, well, will it do that? Does it do that? And I think to answer that question, we can look at the testing we've been doing of positional matchmaking in normal draft queues across the world. Pretty much every server that has normal draft, we've been testing positional matchmaking, and we've been testing position detection, swap detection. And what we've seen in those places is that matchmaking, normal matchmaking measurements that we look at, like queue times and position assignment rates and things like that, those have all been pretty stable since we started testing. But when we look at how often you win when you play an off position, that has actually risen pretty substantially when you consider the entire population. So whereas a player might have only had a win rate of 46-47% in off positions before, which maybe doesn't sound that low, but actually is over the course of time is quite pretty low. We've raised that up toward 49, closer to 50%, which is exactly where you should be playing off positions, right? So I think that we have evidence so far that we can pretty substantially improve matchmaking quality without sacrificing queue times or position assignment rates using positional matchmaking, and that's the same feature we're about to bring to ranked for position ranks. So, I mean, if I were to answer your direct question, yeah, I think we can make matchmaking more fair. I think we already are doing that in normal.
Se eu ficar trocando muito com os meus amigos durante a tela de seleção, o sistema ele vai me colocar restrições para evitar que pessoas burlem, né, o sistema posicional. Com essas restrições, como elas vão ser? Eu vou saber que eu tô recebendo essas restrições? Eu vou receber uma mensagem ou alguma coisa do tipo?
Yeah, for sure. So, yeah, this is interesting. So the way that this generally works is when you play a game, we know what position you got assigned for that game in Champion Select, right? And we also added new tech that we've been testing in normal draft, where we can basically detect what position we think you actually played in the game. And we can use those two pieces of information to understand whether you swapped during that game, right? So if you got assigned top, but then you went mid and someone else went top, then that system is going to say, okay, well, he played mid. And then we look at that and we go, okay, well, he got assigned top, but he played mid. Okay, he must have swapped positions. And at the end of the game, we'll tell you if we think that you've swapped positions. It'll actually say there's a module on the right side of the screen that says how much LP you got, and there's basically a special state when you've traded positions that'll actually tell you, hey, we think you traded this game, whatever. We also keep track of how often you do that. So if you're trading frequently and it looks like you're kind of trying to abuse swapping, then what we can do is we can kind of over time deactivate positional matchmaking more or less for you, which isn't really in your favor, since what that's going to mean is when you actually have to play off position games, they're going to end up being harder. You're basically, your opponents are going to be better than you, which is the situation today. So you're kind of going back to how matchmaking works now, which I just mentioned to you is not as good as what we've seen with positional matchmaking. So yeah, you don't really want to do it. That is something that by tracking trading, we can actually kind of penalize you in that way. I think one thing that you also asked was, hey, will I know if I'm in a state where I've been trading too often? And the answer is yes. It may not be on the 9.2 patch. It might be in 9.3 or something, but it'll basically tell you anytime you've been trading really frequently, there should be some indication that you are maybe in a state where matchmaking is been modified for you. Yeah, so that's kind of the idea.
Algo que eu realmente gostaria de saber de você mesmo, perguntar pra você o que você tá pensando sobre isso. Agora que o sistema está praticamente pronto, tem algo que te preocupa? Algo que você realmente não gostaria que acontecesse quando o sistema estivesse sendo testado?
Well, I think the thing that I most am, I guess, worried about in the sense that you're asking the question is we have designed LP splashing to try to make sure that players are taking all of their games seriously. And I genuinely think, based on where the design is and how it works and how negative splashing can become larger if you're losing lots of games in a position, I think all of those things are going to actually deter the kind of abuse that players are worried about. I think even in our own internal playtests, it may not sound like a lot, but even losing the minimum amount with splashing, which is like -3, -2, something like that, it hurts. It doesn't feel good, and I think I genuinely believe that or the larger splashing as you lose more is definitely going to deter the kind of behavior that we are concerned might happen. My worry, though, is I think there's a possibility that because we're making changes to the system, right? We're changing lots of rules, we're adding position ranks, we're doing all this stuff. My worry would be some players may falsely attribute negative experiences that they have to position ranks or to new placements, right? Every time you lose because someone on your team did really badly, maybe you're more inclined to go like, oh yeah, stupid position ranks, that's the reason I lost this game, instead of sort of just realizing what maybe actually happened, like maybe someone just had bad luck or disconnected or you're having a bad day or whatever, right? So I think that's a real worry that I think could happen. I hope that it doesn't. Like, I honestly hope that the amount of time and energy that we've invested talking to players and being transparent and listening to feedback, like, I hope that will make players feel like they can trust that we're going to make the best system we can. We're going to do it as well as we can, and that it's going to be good and we're going to react to feedback. But there's always a possibility that people won't trust us or that they will sort of falsely attribute bad experiences they're having to the system itself.
Então é isso. Essas são todas as questões que eu tenho pra você. Agradeço muito você por estar aqui com a gente, Ed. E você tem alguma coisa que você gostaria de dizer aí pra comunidade?
Yeah, so it's actually been pretty crazy. I'll tell you a story. A while back, I was streaming pretty frequently on Twitch, and probably like, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 nights a week. And one of the things that I found happened was I got all these like Brazilian players in my stream on just like hanging out and like asking questions and telling jokes and sharing links. And honestly, like I made like 2 or 3 friends, just Brazilian players who came into my stream and like just showed an interest and wanted to chat and like have a fun time. And it was so awesome. Like it gave me such a positive impression of the Brazilian player base and like made me want to visit there so bad. So yeah, I have to say I have sort of a soft spot, I think, for Brazilian players. And I think one thing that I'm really looking forward to as we roll out the system and roll out position ranks is I really hope that that all the Brazilian players watching this video and hopefully some that didn't watch the video as well, I hope you'll come and share your feedback with me and your experiences and frustrations if you have those, and I really hope that over the course of the next couple months we can use all that amazing feedback to make the game better. So yeah, just really appreciate it and looking forward to all the feedback, and you guys are great, so yeah, keep it up.
Thank you. Bom, gente, o Ed tá aqui, né, e eu vou me despedir depois dele. Eu fico muito feliz que a Riot tenha dado esse espaço pra gente, e todos nós estamos bem animados pra saber como vai ser, né, esse novo sistema ranqueado. Então, muito obrigado a você que assistiu até aqui, você é uma pessoa maravilhosa, e até o próximo vídeo.